subsection 1 of the Emergency Powers Act, it is lawful for the Governor General during a state of public emergency, by order, to make regulations for securing the essentials of life to the community. And whereas the Governor General, in exercise of the powers conferred upon him by Section 3, subsection 1 of the Emergency Powers Act, made the Emergency Powers No. 3 Regulations 2019 for securing the essentials of life to the entire area comprising the parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine during the state of public emergency. And whereas Section 3, subsection 4 of the Emergency Powers Act provides that any regulations so made shall be laid before the Senate and House of Representatives as soon as may be after they are made, and shall not continue in force after the expiration of 7 days from the time they are so laid before the Senate and the House of Representatives, whichever shall be the later, unless a resolution is passed by the Senate and House of Representatives providing for the continuance thereof. And whereas the Emergency Powers No. 3 Regulations 2019 were laid in the House of Representatives on the 10th day of September 2019 and in the Senate on the 13th day of September 2019, and whereas it is desirable that A, the state of emergency declared as aforementioned remain and continue in force for a period of 44 days until the 19th day of October 2019, and B, the Emergency Powers No. 3 Regulations 2019 continue in force until the expiration of the state of the public emergency. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Emergency Powers No. 3 Continuance Resolution 2019. 2. The state of public emergency declared by the Governor General by proclamation on the 5th day of September 2019 shall remain in force for a period of 44 days until the 19th day of October 2019. And 3. The Emergency Powers No. 3 Regulations 2019 are hereby continued in force until the 19th day of October 2019. Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm not going to. Yes, to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier. Oh, I just did. Fine. Sorry.
In the Senate on a motion that I had moved, and I've not heard anything in terms of the continuation of that debate, and I think it is very important for us to complete the debate. And secondly, Mr. President, I've asked a number of questions that I've tabled, and they have long passed the date, the time stipulated in the standing orders, and we have not heard anything from the relevant minister in terms of the response to those questions, and I would like to know when the questions will be answered. May it please you, Mr. President.
With respect to the question of the continuation of the debate, Senator Dr. Morris, may I suggest that you just have a word with the leader so that we can have it scheduled as quickly as possible. With respect to the question of the outstanding questions, which is the minister that is responsible for those.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am actually awaiting clarification on a point in the questions, in the answers to the question, and I am hoping that I will have them ready for the next sitting. If I am not present, I am hoping that I will be able to table them. So, but if not, by the following sitting, we should be ready. I'm just awaiting clarification from the ministry on a point within there.
Thank you, Minister. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business.
Mr. President, I now move for suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Heard the motion. Those in favor?
President, before you take this decision, just a clarification. On page 2 of the motion, at the very bottom of the page, and whereas it is desirable that A, the state of public emergency declared as aforementioned remain and continue in force for a period of 44 days until the 19th day of October 2019. Could we just get some clarification? My understanding is an extension of 30 days that is being sought, and that it can be confusing as to whether we are granting a 44 days extension. I understand the first 14 days is gone, it's spent. But I don't see that resolution saying Montego Bay, St. James 90 days plus 90 days, 180 days plus another 90 days. I don't see that in those resolutions. So I'm wondering why is 44 being included in this? Just that clarification there.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand that it was proposed as a better formulation given that the proclamation has not yet expired, so it shall remain in force. Being, it's a fine point, understood, but it was one that was taken, that this would be an improved formulation to say that it will remain in force for a period of 44 days until the 19th, so that it is including the initial 14 days, of which today is the last day, and the ensuing 30th. So yes, it is clearer language insofar as we understand to say an extension of 30 days, but a point was taken by the technical team that a purer language would be to say that it shall remain in force for 44, and that's the totality of the period.
Mr. President, am I to understand that going forward, when we count St. James extension, if we get to that, and we come to South St. Andrew extension, we'll be seeing the total number of days for which the particular state of emergency has been enforced. Is that going to be the situation going forward? Or this one is an exception and we're treating this one this way, but we're not going to treat Honourable and Westmoreland the same way? I just want to be clear, because we arrive at today's position on the basis of a discussion elsewhere in the other place. And the Senate, we on this side, is going to, we don't always do it, but we're going to follow in line with what the leader of the opposition and his team in the other place did. You can be assured of that today.
Senator Brown, that's part of your debate, man.
No. I just want to be clear on this.
Minister, just respond.
No, my debate is going to be different, but I want to be clear that this motion before us is for 30 days extension, and I don't want any misunderstanding. That is a day longer than the 30 days.
You got an explanation?
No, sorry. What I need, Mr. President, is consistency in position, and I'm asking if this is how it's going to be reflected going forward, and the answer is yes. So when the next one comes, I'll take it.
The question, Minister, is whether the formulation, the wording that has been chosen today, the question, Minister, is whether the wording that is proposed today will be the wording that will be used going forward in the interest, quote, of consistency.
And my understanding is that it will not, but I am anticipating that we can give further clarification in about a minute. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President.
So the motion can be
Yes, the point, and again, it's about purity of language from a technical perspective, based on the fact that this is a continuation of the original period. So counting of the days is different, while in the extension it would be different. So this is the language that is proposed for today, and but it does not change the substance of what we are agreeing, and it's not related to the actual period of 30 days.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senator Brown. Those in favor of the motion?
Mr. President, you see, if we are asked to debate a motion, the motion has to be clear before we start the debate. And you can have something shall remain in force for a period of 44 days. How can you include, no, I'm not talking about until the 19th. No, but those days have elapsed. No, those days have elapsed, so you can't account for them. So I remain in force for a period of 30 days to make the language simple. So we can, so when I vote, it's clear I vote for an extension of 30 days if I vote. So the motion has to be simple and clear. The Governor General, by powers vested in him, gave an initial 14 days that the Parliament didn't have to. It is now elapsed. We're seeking an extension, so it shall be in force for an extra 30 days. Because you are saying, no, but the minister said that the ones before, the language will be different. And Senator Brown asked for consistency. So why it will be different? When you came for the previous extension, you didn't say for a further 180 days. You said 90 days. So go back to those previous
Senator
regulations.
Senator Skepper.
So it's a clumsy wording. Before us, I want to clarify before I vote.
1 minute. I understand.
Mr. President,
You know
perhaps
that what
if
we
we
are really
amended
doing.
it and had the word continue.
You know that,
trying
you know,
to-
Senator.
So we can start the debate.
It's
clear as what the debate
not
is.
correct.
Mr. President, if I may, Mr. President, this is different
30.
from an extension. This is a continuation of the original period. So allow me to just read from the Constitution. This is why this will be different from the extension resolutions. This is the continuation of the original period. So it says, a proclamation made by the Governor General for the purposes of and in accordance with this section A shall, unless previously revoked, remain in force for 14 days or for such longer period, not exceeding 3 months as both houses. So shall remain in force for 14 days or for such longer period. So this is a longer period that is being agreed to at this point in time. This is different from the fact that under paragraph 3B, it may be extended from time to time by a resolution passed in like manner for further periods, not exceeding in respect of each 3 months. So both have an upper limit of 3 months, but this is the original period remaining in force. What happens later is a further extension, not exceeding 3 months in each instance from time to time. So the language is fine. It is just that it appears somewhat different. So it is in totality, this first original period under 3A will be 44 days in its totality. And then any further will be an extension. This is an explanation of what is being done in accordance with the Constitution, and it is not at all unclear. How it will manifest itself is in an additional 30 days. Yes, but in terms of the language of the Constitution, what we're doing now is ensuring that it remains in force for such longer period, as opposed to the extension, which is what would happen in a future
In any event,
resolution.
members of this Honourable House, in relation to the clarification, it says, shall remain in force for a period of 44 days until the 19th. So that there is no, in my mind, there is no uncertainty. So I'm going to put the motion. Those in favor? Against? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the issue of the extension of the state of emergency for the parishes of St. Catherine and Clarendon is what is before us today, as we have just set out in the resolution. Mr. President, as we are all aware, in these discussions, in these debates, not only are lives at stake, but the emotional and mental well-being of our people. So many Jamaicans affected by the ongoing criminality from gangs and dons and their guns. Mr. President, following on the spirit of collaboration and cooperation extended in that other place just 2 days ago, I do hope that today I will lead a debate which will again bring this Honourable Chamber's focus to a clear understanding of why we are here. Mr. President, at the end of the day, when you strip everything away from this debate, you strip away the politics, special interests at different levels of society, the fact that this is a repeated activity because the fundamentals of what we're seeking to address in different locations are not different, nor do they easily fit into neat blocks of 14 or 30 or 90-day periods at a time. At the end of the day, we are here to act in the interests of Jamaica as a whole by protecting and saving as many Jamaican lives as possible. Mr. President, there is no doubt in my mind that each and every one of us in this chamber today want the same thing. We want peace and safety for ourselves, for our families, our friends, our fellow Jamaicans. Every little boy, every little girl, every woman, every man across this beautiful land deserves to live without fear. We all deserve to live and to never know anyone personally who has been murdered or who someone has tried to murder. To never have the trauma of fearing that our children will be raped coming home from school or going to the shop, or that a baby will be shot in crossfire. Mr. President, some would say that this is a given, but we all know that this is not the lived reality of far too many people in certain communities located across Jamaica. We all have a fundamental right to life, Mr. President, but because of the gangs, the dons, and guns concentrated in certain communities, which they control by fear and threats to safety, and from which they spread their influence, their fear through violence and intimidation, and they empower themselves through extortion. Mr. President, because of this, everyone is not being given the space they deserve to enjoy that right. Mr. President, the levels of violent crime in the parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine, especially that of Clarendon, have been too high for some time. The residents of that parish have been crying out for help, and indeed political representatives on both sides of the aisle have cried out for action. Our security forces have done the analysis and responded. The Prime Minister and the Governor General have played their roles, and the elected representatives in that other place have also played their part. Today, the matter falls to us. Let me state clearly, Mr. President, that no one sees the declaration of a state of public emergency as a panacea. It is not the crime plan. It will not, by itself, solve the intractable criminal, psychosocial, or socioeconomic challenges that have entrenched themselves in our communities over the years, over the decades, Mr. President. And it will not overnight change Jamaica or even the communities in which they have been implemented. But, Mr. President, as we acknowledge that it will take time to change the situation in these parishes, we note that most importantly, regarding its utility, having noted its limitations, the states of public emergency, as implemented, have been proven to save lives. Mr. President, again understanding what it is that we are intending to do, as stated by the Prime Minister on the 5th of September, when he announced the state of public emergency on which we focus today, and I quote, "The government is not using the state of public emergency as a substitute for regular policing. What the state of emergency does is to provide a respite in the number of crimes, in particular murders, that are taking place. It helps to expand the number of law enforcement persons that we have on the ground, and it helps to restrict the movement of criminal enterprise, and then that gives regular police an increased ability to do their work." Mr. President, that progress has been made. It's clear. This was even highlighted by the opposition leader in that other place on Tuesday, where he noted that it cannot be said that no progress has been made on the crime front with the use of states of emergency. And this is important because you have to give credit where it is due in the same way we identify and point out when things are not going well. Mr. President, I am certain that we are all fully committed to supporting our security forces as they seek to secure the peaceful existence, quality of life, and indeed life itself for Jamaicans, Mr. President. And we know and acknowledge that 14 days, a 14-day period which would expire at midnight tonight, is simply not enough time to make the kind of difference needed in St. Catherine and Clarendon. So it is in this context that I will ask and urge for support of the extension before us. Mr. President, on the formal side, of course, the revised Emergency Powers Number 3 Continuance Resolution 2019, which seeks to have the state of public emergency in the geographic areas consisting of Clarendon and the entire area of St. Catherine remain in force for a further 30 days following the expiration of the current period. For clarity, and acting on the advice of the Commissioner of Police and the Chief of Defence Staff, it was assessed that the level of violent criminal activity experienced, continuing, and threatened in the two parishes is of such a nature and so extensive a scale that they pose a threat to public safety and order. The scale is such, Mr. President, that they undermine the rule of law and threaten the democratic institutions that support our communities in the specified areas. Mr. President, responding to these circumstances, on Thursday, the 5th of September, 2019, the Governor General declared a state of public emergency for the geographical area consisting of the entire parishes just mentioned. And they, in turn, Mr. President, are made up of 3 police divisions: Clarendon, St. Catherine North, and St. Catherine South. Together they form one contiguous area of operations. Mr. President, the selection of the area was done primarily based on the rate of murders, gang-related activities, and other associated violent activities operating in the contiguous space. At the time of the declaration of the state of emergency, measured from the start of 2019, Clarendon had recorded 100 murders, reflecting the second highest for number of murders among police divisions. The St. Catherine South Police Division had recorded 91 murders, reflecting the 4th highest number of murders for that period. And this figure represents a significant increase of 45% when compared to the same period in 2018. Mr. President, the St. Catherine North Police Division recorded 66 murders, reflecting the 6th highest number of murders for the same period. And gang activity, while disrupted, has been found to still be significant. And I note this, Mr. President, because in respect of the St. Catherine North Division, there has actually been a 14% reduction year over year for the same period. But 66 murders is still high. And the level of gang activity in particular, and how it is that it operates in terms of its sphere of influence beyond the specific division, has been assessed as requiring further dismantling. Mr. President, cumulatively, the combined geographical space, that is St. Catherine and Clarendon, accounted for almost 1/3 of murders in the country since the start of the year. Almost 1/3. Mr. President, St. Catherine alone, of course, accounted for more than 150, as just indicated, reflecting the 2nd highest murder count among all parishes. Mr. President, to demonstrate the immediate positive impact of the implementation of the state of public emergency in these 2 parishes, when they looked at the first 7 days of implementation, so the 5th of September to the 11th, the first full week, as compared to the immediately preceding 7 days, the rates of murders and shootings together had reduced by 73%. 73%, Mr. President. As at September 15, using another metric, Mr. President, 135 persons have been arrested and charged with varying offenses. 35 in St. Catherine and 100 in Clarendon. Further details of detentions, etc., undoubtedly will be shared in the dialogue that has been agreed to in that other place to take place going forward. Mr. President, despite these initial gains, these very early day gains, the parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine still, of course, remain a significant concern. As stated before and as noted in that other place, 14 days quite simply is not enough time to take a hold of the criminality that has become entrenched in certain areas. Mr. President, I want to make just clear note of the fact that an analysis of the crime data indicates that the threats posed by gangs in that area has been linked to the prevalence of violent crime across police decisions. And the sad truth is that many of these gangs and their leaders posture themselves as protectors of communities. But they do more harm than good, Mr. President, and we have to put a stop to it. We have to protect the sons and daughters of these communities from the elements that come with neighborhood gang activities. We must act to take away the fear and the stress, Mr. President, in these communities. Mr. President, the 2018 National Gang Assessment indicates that there is a total of 50 gangs, 25 active gangs operating in just these 3 divisions. And these gangs are characterized as being heavily armed, and their capacity for rampant and violent criminal activities are cause for sustained high level of fear and insecurity among the citizenry. Mr. President, the combined activities of gangs manifest themselves in extortion, inter-gang conflicts, illegal firearm trading and distribution, illegal narcotics trading, and contract killings. Mr. President, cumulatively, these actions have resulted in heightened crime figures, and in particular murder and shooting for these and other police divisions. Mr. President, the declaration of state of public emergency in these divisions have thus far allowed the security forces to conduct operations designed to target and disrupt gangs and organized criminal networks, to apprehend wanted persons, to seize illegal weapons, ammunition, and narcotics, to target the proceeds of illegal activities, deter extortion, reduce freedom of movement of the criminal element, and to establish public order. As we know, there are several gangs awaiting trial coming out of work conducted during the last state of emergency in St. Catherine North and subsequent thereto. Results are being delivered, but we require time, Mr. President. As operations continue, the strategy moving forward must include returning the police divisions to a state where normal policing can continue. 14 days, Mr. President, not enough. Mr. President, the government has sought to balance the interests of small businesses by extending opening times after consultation with the heads of the security forces, again, as agreed in that other place. As explained by the Prime Minister, this is something which has been done in the tri-parish state of emergency, but later down the line after the initial period of implementation. The extension has been implemented earlier than in other spaces, and it has been sent for gazetting today. Mr. President, Mr. President, the order has implemented in respect of clubs and fast food restaurants opening hours that will extend from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Every place required by law to operate under a tavern license has been extended from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Petroleum filling stations have been extended from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and supermarkets, grocery shops, haberdasheries, and any other place other than a place referred to in any other paragraph of this table offering goods for sale has been extended from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Pharmacies, Mr. President, may open from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. and churches may open from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and any other public place, Mr. President, from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Mr. President, the order has revoked the previous order which had set opening times, and undoubtedly the Minister of National Security will make further, or rather ensure that this is further, information is further understood, but we have followed through on the commitment made, which was to have consultations with the heads of the security forces to ensure that balancing the interests and ensuring that the concerns that were being expressed in respect of business owners and persons who wish to access them, that the attending to their concerns would not, how shall I say, will not reduce the efficacy of, or rather remove it, because undoubtedly it will create different circumstances for its operation. But Mr. President, in that other place, in the spirit of collaboration, we've also committed to supply additional data about achievements on the ground, and that we understand that the request for further extension will then be considered in that context. But it is in this context, Mr. President, this extension of a spirit of collaboration, of cooperation, and a commitment to seek to share more information in spaces where perhaps the sensitivity can be managed more effectively. It is in this present context, Mr. President, that I commend the resolution to this Senate for debate and ask for approval of the resolutions before us. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Senator Floyd Morris, I recognize you from a seat other than your own.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I was rising, my natural body response was triggering a yawn. But out of respect for the leader of government business, I held back my natural response. And Mr. President, I listened to the presentation of the leader of government business in which she tried to convince herself that the state of emergency is working. And when I looked at her facial expression, I knew that she was unconvinced. But equally, the body language of the supportive cast was unconvincing. Mr. President, 21 months ago, we sat in this honorable chamber debating the extension of the first state of emergency, which was declared by the Honourable Prime Minister. And 21 months after, we are still using what the framers of the Constitution established as a matter of last resort to protect the citizens of Jamaica. We're still using the state of emergency to fight crime. This is after an elaborative and dramatic election promise was given that the people of Jamaica would be able to sleep with their windows and doors open. And instead of seeing that sort of protection for the Jamaican people, we are still seeing the Jamaican people living in fear in spite of the suspension of the rights of citizens in certain parishes. Mr. President, you know, it is no doubt in my mind, that this SOE has not worked. No doubt in my mind that it has not worked. Because if you are to look at the data in details, and my colleague will do so, but if you are to look at the whole situation in details, you'll see and understand what it is that we are saying. But, you know, some individuals don't have the capacity to understand complex matters. Mr. President, the fact of the matter is that all we have done is to suspend the rights of the citizens and increase the frustration level of the security forces. Because all over you go, you hear the police complaining because they are frustrated with what is taking place out there. And what is very disturbing to me is that we have watered down a significant constitution provision. I was talking to a man in the barber shop the other day, and I don't understand, I don't know how white rum tastes, because Senator Charles, I don't drink it. But when I spoke with Senator Skeffrey, I got a clearer understanding as to what the man was saying to me in the barber shop. Because the man in the barber shop said to me, what we have done with the state of emergency is to use a flask of white rum to chase a gallon of water.
You have to use the water to chase the rum. You can't chase the water with the rum.
Mr. President, is using the rum to chase the water.
That's how you can solve it.
So we're watering down. Watering down.
Or rumming down the water.
So, Mr. President, you can understand what is happening out there. People are now seeing the effort as a big joke. And what is happening, Mr. President, what is happening is that whilst the SOEs are taking place, we see where the criminals are outfoxing the security forces. They are even now using drones as a part of their operation. Is you guys say so? Not me.
Who said it in particular?
Right? So, Mr. President, you can understand what is taking place. So, Mr. President, when I read or listened to the news a couple months ago, and I heard that the Prime Minister said that he was prepared to use the state of emergency for 5 to 7 years. I recounted a song in the 1970s which said, Arlene, I must dream you a dream. But if I should apply that song into 2019, I would say, Prime Minister Holness, a dream you a dream. Because under the watch of this opposition, you understand that cannot and will not fly. So just treat it as a dream, Mr. Prime Minister. Treat it as a dream. Mr. President, one of the things that galls me about all of this is that when you look at some of the initiatives that are needed to deal with the crime wave, for example, an increase in the security forces, we're not seeing the seriousness in treatment from the government. Because my understanding is that it takes 9 months to train a batch of police. My mathematical calculation tell me that with 21 months done since we have first implemented the state of emergency, we could have trained at least 2 batches of security for officers for the police force. And we would have increased significantly the number of officers that are needed to patrol the streets and to help curtail crime. And then, Mr. President, I spoke in this honorable chamber, and I have said to the government, one of the major contributing factors to the murder rate is that of domestic violence. About 30% of the murders that are committed are as a result of domestic violence. Police can go in the people them yard and bedroom and solve those crimes. And that is why I have consistently argued for an increase in social workers in the public sector. Because social workers are the ones now leader of government business who would be able to be in those communities to speak with individuals and to give them guidance, give them counseling, and to point them into direction where they can overcome some of the challenges that they are encountering. But when you look at the major public assistance program that helps a significant portion of poor individuals in Jamaica, the PASS program, with 322,000 individuals on it, but less than 300 social workers. When you do the mathematical calculation, you're talking about 1 social worker to 1,000. And international standards require that it be significantly lower than that. So what we are talking about, Mr. President, is a situation where our society is not equipped with the skill sets, the personnel that are needed to help to fight this crime monster, because police alone and soldiers can't deal with it. You have to have other professionals who are giving support. And I see the government give away over $11 billion in taxes in 2019-2020. When a portion of that, all it requires, Mr. President, if you hire another 200 social workers in the system, and you're paying them 1.5 million, it's still cheap. But since it's the figure of the government, 1.5, let me use it. 1.5 times 200, that is $300 million to put in additional 200 social workers in the system. What? Just 300 million dollars it would require to.
Them give that to one man for use car. Them give one man that for use car.
Senator Webby, you don't know the term dege. Yeah, but think back. Mr. President, Mr. President, $300 million it would take to add to hire an additional 200 social workers in the system, and we per annum, and we gave away $11 billion. I believe, Mr. President, that we're not serious about fighting crime in this country.
Yeah.
Because the things that we need to do, crime is a clear and present danger, and we accept that. But what are the supportive mechanisms that are being put in place to make sure that we eradicate this monster from our society once and for all? You know, I am one individual, you know, who I want the best for my country. And I am not going to say that the members on the other side don't want the best for this country. But I am saying that your priorities are misplaced. Your priorities are misplaced. Because if your priorities were straight from 2018, when we have been talking about putting in more social infrastructure, including the hiring of social workers, we would have gotten significantly better results. Significantly better results. But Senator Morgan, you're a part of a PR government, and that can't solve crime. It requires some serious initiative, because whilst it is that you're going to get corporation for the extension, I was saying on the side, you know, whilst you're getting the reprieve, because this is what the state of emergency is doing, giving you some breathing ground. Do some tangible thing, my man. Do some tangible, impactful things in the communities that the people can see an improvement in the quality of their life. You know, Mr. President, you know, I run on the 5K circuit quite regularly, and I know that the leader of government business does so as well. I mean, I haven't seen you for a little while. I haven't seen you in a little while, but you still look in shape. Still look in shape. But Mr. President, I was downtown a couple months ago, and you know, I had to go through one of those inner city communities to really get to the race on time. And as I traveled through the community, I smell a stench in the community. And I said to myself, how could we be comfortable in our people living, getting up morning, noon, and night, and living in these communities? It doesn't, Senator Gale, it doesn't matter where the community is, you know. Any one of the community, whether it be Tivoli, whether it be in Rivoli, whether it be Dunkirk, wherever it is, we must not allow our people to live in that sort of squalor. That is what is contributing to the aggressive tendencies of our people and contributing to the high crime rate. And we have to make sure that we embark on a massive social transformation initiative that will clean up the communities across the country so that our people can live in greater dignity and comfort. We cannot be satisfied and comfortable with our people living in such squalor. And then all we want to do is to turn around and suspend their rights after we have failed to provide the requisite services for them to live and prosper in this Jamaica land we love. And then we want to suspend their rights and punish them for crimes that they have not committed. Mr. President, I'm very passionate about these things because the number of criminals in our society, is not a significant block of Jamaicans. My guesstimate is that you don't have 10,000. And you are going to tell me, Mr. President, that we can't put in place the requisite mechanisms to control those 10,000 recalcitrants within our society. Something is fundamentally wrong. And one of the things that I am going to say as I take my seat, a calling on the leaders of our society, to understand that we have a responsibility to the people of Jamaica to make sure that their quality of life is improved. And once their quality of life is improved, you can understand that these individuals are not going to resort to a life of criminality, because the vast majority of Jamaicans are decent, law-abiding citizens. And it can't be that we want to suspend the fundamental rights and freedom of the majority in order to control a few. It just shows me that somebody or somebodies are bankrupt for ideas. And it is because of that bankruptcy of ideas why we are in this situation where we have to be using state of emergency to fight crime and seeking extension on a consistent basis. And Mr. President, we have to make sure that we get all the minds together, the best ideas together, to make sure that we put all the ideas in place to deal with this menace that is an albatross around our neck. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Morris.
No.
Senator Brown.
Mr. President, let's be clear. This opposition wants to see a Jamaica where our people can live secure and without fear. We want to see murders down. We want to see crime down. And that is why, despite our misgivings with these state of emergencies, we have supported it. But the government must realize that they can't take our support for what some people say is unconstitutional for granted or forever. The last time in the Senate, where 14 votes are necessary at the minimum, I was the 14th vote. I did so reluctantly. Today, well, certainly up until Tuesday night, my vote was not going to be had for supporting an extension or a continuation. I thank the leader of the opposition and his team for bringing some sense to the government on Tuesday in the other place. That has secured my vote for the 30 days extension today. But I can't guarantee that it's going to be so onward. Mr. President, 2.5 years ago, I made a speech from this very spot in the Senate. I'm going to quote a part of that speech then. Now the government is admitting that the nation is in a state of fear. However, they seem clueless as to how to bring the murder rate even to the levels of January and February 2016, where it was under the previous government. And then I continued. At the beginning of December 2016, bear that date in mind, December 2016, the Prime Minister, while addressing the swearing-in of the new Chief of Defense Staff, promised that the National Security Council was finalizing a comprehensive action plan to deal with crime. That's December 2016. The Prime Minister promised that the National Security Council was finalizing a comprehensive action plan to deal with crime. That's almost 3 years ago. We have continuously raised in the Senate, is the state of emergency your crime plan? Well, the minister told us today, no, the state of emergency is not the crime plan. So I asked, as I did in February 2017, where is the crime plan? Where is the crime plan? Because it wasn't just that time alone that the Prime Minister made the promise of a plan. He made it prior to that. Mr. President, let us be clear. As Senator Morris has said, the Prime Minister came to power with the promise that you could go to bed, leave your doors open, and wake up in the morning and still be alive. But that alone should tell us that the Prime Minister didn't get it right. Because if you wake up in the morning, you must be alive. You can't wake up if you're not alive. No. So we know in that there was gimmicks in the Prime Minister's presentation. So he made those promises. Probably I should say we could see the Samphaiism in the Prime Minister then. Mr. President, I don't watch people close. Well, now nothing else to do. No wonder the crime is out of hand. Mr. President, we come here today. It's an old suit with the poor fellow. Him watch people close. That's all them do. Watch people. President, we come here today to deal with a new set of state of emergency. Ministers say continuation, some say extension, beyond the 14 days that they are allowed to do it without the blessing of the Senate and the House. The first set of SOEs started in January 2018 in the parish of St. James. Today, we have states of emergency in St. James, Westmoreland, Honourable, St. Andrew South, Clarendon and St. Catherine are the new babies in this SO. The minister kept telling us while she spoke, 14 days is not enough. 14 days is not enough. This is not about 14 days of SOE. This is 21 months of state of emergency in the country. Not 14 days, 21 months.
Almost half.
And Mr. President, 21 months is an effective time. It's sufficient time for us to do an effective review of the state of emergency policy, which they say is not the crime plan.
Where's the plan?
We don't see the crime plan. We only see the SOE.
This is not the plan. That's not
We only see the SOE and we see Zozo.
That's not working.
Part of their crime plan was to pass a law to deal with two communities in Jamaica. Mount Salem and Denhamtown. Because that law we passed here that we thought was going to bring social intervention in fighting crime is only reserved for two communities. Two communities. Zozo law for only two communities. Crazy. One would have thought that that approach would have been widespread across the country, because crime is not only in Denhamtown and Mount Salem. In fact, to put the Zozo in Mount Salem, they exaggerated the amount of murders that was taking place in Mount Salem. They don't have a crime plan. So they have come with the most extreme measures allowed under the Constitution, and measures which incidentally the Constitution and the Parliament therefore put in the hands of parliamentarians, not the Chief of Security Forces, not the Commissioner of Police and the head of the Army. It is the Parliament, and the Parliament is not and should never be a rubber stamp for the Chief of Security Forces. When the Parliament become a rubber stamp for them, then we are in a military state. We have given up our parliamentary democracy and we'll be run from Up Park Camp and up at Hope Road. We can't have that. So the Parliament must examine the realities of these SOEs over the 21 months. Mr. President, let's go back a little more than the 21 months. In September 2016, in fact, the Gleaner in an article entitled Murder Madness on the 21st of September 2016 wrote as follows. They said Jamaica was averaging 100 homicides per monthly. And it said further that Jamaica was on the verge of recording 900 murders since the start of the year, with just 3 months still remaining. 2016, no state of emergency, Senator Ransford Brand. No state of emergency. And the Gleaner was saying, murder madness. You were approaching 900. That's 3 years ago. No state of emergency. September 21st, the Gleaner reported it. Well, fast forward to today. Fast forward to last week, when the police put out their periodic report up to Saturday 14th of September. They say in 2016, no state of emergency, 888 murders. 888 murders, 2016, no state of emergency. In 2019, with state of emergencies all over the place, we have 941 murders up to last week, Saturday, according to the police.
Bigger murder madness.
So let me go over it again. 2016, no state of emergency. And Prime Minister, if you hear this, I know you can't challenge the stats, but neither can you challenge the logics of this data. 2016, no state of emergency, 888 murder up to the 14th of September.
It was murder madness.
And that was called murder madness. 2019, 941 murders, despite the states of emergencies.
What?
That's more than murder madness.
Madness.
So when you get up, Minister, and your colleagues and tell us, along with the Prime Minister, SOE is saving lives.
We're talking about Jamaica.
Not really true. Not really true. You're only telling us part of the story that not many people, that more people haven't died than died.
It's not working. What a crime plan.
But to tell me that you're saving life when more people are dying doesn't sound logical. It doesn't sound logical.
There is a number in one way.
So your stats, you see, Jamaica is not one little police division or a parish. We have to look at the whole. We have to look.
Yeah.
We have to look, Senator Brian, at the life of Sasha K. Fairclough, gunned down before 6 o'clock, young attorney at law, in Ocherios, no state of emergency.
Yeah.
But you didn't save her life.
TJ Melrose
You
Music.
didn't save her life.
Manchester.
So this thing about saving life, why we must support something that is,
PRC.
in the view of many eminent lawyers, unconstitutional, and which effectively is not working. So on murder, it's not working. Mr. President, let's take shooting.
Everyone.
Let's take shooting.
Good at that.
2016, same period up to September 14, January to September 14. 801 shooting. No state of emergency. 2019, state of emergency, 900 shooting. Clearly, you're not going in the right direction. And I told my friend, Senator Webby, that I was going to bring this data. Because he's a man who understands the importance of data in making decisions, in making successful decisions.
Yeah.
But all you come to tell me is saving life. When the figures say that that's a lie. Lives are being lost, and more lives are being lost.
Ethical debate.
So that's murder going in the wrong direction. Shooting going in the wrong direction.
Murder madness.
Let's look at robbery. Robbery. Last year, last year, 777 robbery for the same period. This year, 820 robberies for the same period. Minister, the report card not looking good.
No.
The SOE not working. It's failing.
You have to repeat the class.
It's failing. Minister,
Repeat the class.
Minister, breaking. Last year, 854 breaking for the same period, January 1st to September 14. 854. This year, under your many states of emergency, breaking is 903. Going in the wrong direction. Going in the wrong direction. You're not solving crime. And believe me, Minister, I'm not making it up. The figures come from the police. Your Prime Minister of it. Your National Security of it. Your Commissioner of it. Your Chief of Staff of it. And if they're honest with the Jamaican people, they will tell us it's not going in the right direction. Mr. President, murder bad, shooting bad, robbery bad, breaking bad. Well, government terrible. But let's listen to this one. Stolen motor vehicles. Last year, 330. Same period. January 1st to September 14. 330. This year, 445 people had their vehicles stolen. going in the wrong direction. Just this week we heard about abduction of workers, vehicles stolen. It's not working. It now work. Now work. And it's time for us to recognize that and change course. Time to change course. If it was working, we would expect to see more arrests. But when it comes to arrests, last year there's 9,978 arrests for the same period. This year, arrests down by over 600 to 9,329. It's not working. It's going in the wrong direction. It's going in the wrong direction. Arrests with evidence. Arrests with evidence. Firearm, for example. Last year, 1,054 arrests with firearm. This year, only 831. With all the states of emergency? With all the states of emergency? How comes that is down? How comes more police and soldiers out there? How come the shock and awe? And you're arresting less people? What do they do? Just go underground with the guns and surface when the police get tired? Because you're working them how much hours? You're working the soldiers them how much hours? Get tired? We're getting into diminishing returns?
Less energy out there.
So it's showing up, Senator Webby, in the data. And you and I know the value of data in business, the value of data in making correct decisions. And when you look at the data, you're out. But murder in the wrong direction, shooting in the wrong direction, robbery in the wrong direction, breaking in the wrong direction, stolen motor vehicle in the wrong direction, arrest in the wrong direction, arrest with evidence in the wrong direction, arrest for drugs, arrest for dangerous drugs. Last year 809 in the same period. This year 747. Not going in the right direction. And then, President, let's take murders with guns. Murder by guns last year was 737, or 79, call it 80% of the murders were with guns. This year, with the ton load of states of emergency, with the ton load of 2 Zozos, murders by gun this year is 783, almost 50 more than last year for the same period, at a percentage of 83%, which happened to be the highest percentage of murders with gun for the last 5 or more years. Senator Webby, it's not going in the right direction. No, leave my friend alone. He's entitled to wake up from his slumber and pretend that he's part of the debate. Mr. President, the guns. As an implement used in robbery, last year there's 515 gun used in robbery. This year, 580, 71%, largest for a long time. The guns have not been removed under this state of emergency. And when we spoke before, we said you must get the guns, you must get the gangs, you must get the dons. But the statistics is showing that you're not doing that. And remember, the statistics is here, published last week, Saturday by the police.
Your statistics.
Your stats. Your stats. Your scorecard not working. Gun seized last year.
Repeat the class.
Gun seized last year, 507. Gun seized this year, 484. And put that, Mr. President, against the Minister of National Security, telling the country that every month 200 guns come into the country illegally. Every month 200 guns come in illegally. Which means that at a rate of picking up about 50, a little over 50 per month, we have a deficit every month of those that was there before plus 150. And you call that success? You call that saving life? You call that saving life? It means we need a crime plan that get the guns. That's what we need. A crime plan that get the guns. And Mr. President, let me say this here.
You're there now, man. Talk about your turn.
Your problem is bad minds. Mr. President,
Hold on, a point of order.
Mr.
A point of
President,
order. Let me go through all the
Mr.
bad mind
President.
that you and the opposition have shown to Jamaica.
Senator
You're out of order.
Senator
You're out of order. You're out of order. Don't try to me. Remember something.
Senator Charles, you have a point of order? Senator Charles, you have a point of order?
no.
Inquiring person.
Mr. President, yes. Mr. President,
Senator Brown.
yeah, what we need, Mr. President, is a plan that get the guns. Some time ago, I came to the Senate and I reported that a contract was signed to go hunt our equipment that will allow the police to scan motor vehicles and see if guns are there. Then Senator Samula got up and said, yes, the contract was there, but was given to a PNP candidate. Senator Samula, it matters not to me whether it's PNP or JLP, I know who got it.
On a point of order.
What am I getting up for now?
Senator Brown.
On a point of order, Mr. President, I think that you should ask the member to clarify what he's saying. Senator Samuda in his intervention didn't predicate the reason why the contract was not finally executed on the fact that the person was a PNP candidate. He's misleading the House.
Interesting information, but not a point of order. Continue,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. President. Mr. President, it matters not to me whether the recipient of the contract is PNP or JLP. In fact, the former PNP candidate is now actively working with the JLP. It is his right to defect. Cool. But my concern is, where is the taxpayers' money that we have paid to get that equipment? Whether PNP or JLP, I want to see their handheld scanners helping the police to recover the 200 guns coming in every month, plus the backlog of guns that is here.
Point of order.
That's what I want.
Point of order, Mr.
I
President.
don't care whether it's PNP or JLP or ex-PNP.
Thank you, Senator Brown.
3 points of order so far.
Matthew.
The senator is misleading because he is well aware that the issue with the scanners is the level of radiation and that testing is underway to allow for delivery of the equipment.
That's the point.
Thank you. Senator Brown, are you aware of that?
Chairman, you know what I'm aware of? No, I'm going to tell you what I'm aware of.
I just ask a simple question.
I'm going to tell you what I'm aware
Senator
of.
Brown, just answer me now.
You're a Queen's Counsel, I'm a little layman. I'm going to answer. I'm going
So
to
you
answer.
don't want to answer me?
No, I'm answering you.
Senator Samuda, thank you for the intervention. Senator Brown, continue.
Thank you, sir.
Since you don't want to answer.
I don't care about the level of radioactivity. We should check that when we were doing the procurement. We should check that when we were doing the procurement. Don't send the money into a man's bank account. Tell him to go look on a scanner, and you don't know the level of radiation.
So you pay the money, then you go check it out.
So, like the used car, the government is Like the used car, the government has wasted taxpayers' money instead of using it effectively to fight crime and bring down the thing. So I want to make that clear. And again, I want to know, what is the status of the money we paid for those unheld scanners, which we don't have and the police don't have, to help them fight? So I want, it seems so. So,
Look here, 35. Let me, 35.
Mr. President.
Hello, 1 minute, Senator Brown.
170. 170 million.
The member is entitled to be heard in silence. And the members from the
270.
UTEC are looking on and saying, but I can't hear what is going on. And it's not this side alone, because Senator Scarfrey, you have taken now to shouting across the aisle.
No, I'm just
So it's not this side alone.
I'm just talking something.
So it's two sides. And what concerned me is that you were made the reference to the White Room thing. I'm having second thoughts about you. Senator Brown, continue, please. Ladies, members of the Senate, please allow the member to continue so we can move with some degree of alacrity.
So Mr. President, what have helped the police in recovering the guns, given the stats I've outlined, using the police data, those unheld scanning equipment? I saw a video from Australia, from Nigeria this morning, where a guy was putting firearms, rifles, President, in the glove, below the glove pocket, and then inserting back the glove pocket. Guns are trafficked every day in the country. But those unheld scanners, not just a random little search of the glove pocket, would be helpful. I want to know, not that just a ex-PNP man get the contract, but when the police is going to get those scanners to help fight crime. That's my concern.
You really want to answer to that? Senator Brown, and I'm being serious, you know. You want to answer to that question in all seriousness?
Am I not allowed to
No, you can ask, but I'm just making a suggestion. Hear me. If you really want to answer to that question, write it and put it now.
Mr. President, what I understand you to be saying...
Or is a rhetorical question?
Mr. President, what I understand you to be saying, that the government is not going to answer that scandal. I take that. I move on. The scandal of spending money to get something that you can. I move on. Mr. President, the statistics I've given can be cold, but they are real. I want to put some flesh on those statistics. I thought you told them that I should be heard in silence, sir. But they're not hearing. I will deal with them. Mr. President, a businessman in Montego Bay, Mr. Andy Chin.
Senator Brown,
yeah.
Hear what I'm going to say now. You did it once already and I was to talk to you about it. People are going through the most amount of distress. Don't come to the Senate and call out the people them name until you have the
Mr. President,
family. You agree
unless you can show me the standing order which I can't do it.
No, sometimes decency is not in the standing order.
No, President, you know the problem? When Andrew Ones talked about crime, there was no decency issue there.
No,
so when I talk about it, you talk about decency?
No, what I'm saying, you call up the lady, the lawyer name that was...
But she died.
Yes, I know.
Brutally.
The whole of Jamaica know, but you think the family...
So why then is a problem if I call it some more?
Hear what I'm
President,
ruling. Hear my ruling on this matter.
You're going to muzzle me? All right.
No, I'm not. Yes, okay, I'm going to muzzle you. In an instance like this, where a family has experienced the most horrific circumstance, I myself cannot imagine it. You come to the Senate and I throw people name all about and I bring it up in argument about state of emergency. Allow the family to grieve allow the people of Jamaica to recognize the terrible state that these people must be in. Don't take it and throw it around the Senate. I know you call up somebody else's name. I heard it when I was outside. Don't do it, man.
You know, Mr.
And
President,
I'm not saying it. Look here now. It is not in the standing orders. What I'm appealing to
leave
you.
me alone,
Allow the people them to grieve and come to terms with the situation, man.
Mr. President, I am allowed to speak in accordance with the standing order, and I'm doing so. A businessman in Montego Bay, taken from his house, you don't want him name called, but the country knows his name. Taken from his house in Montego Bay, taken from Albion, in the middle of a state of emergency, driven to his business place, robbed and murdered. And then you tell me that his family wouldn't be concerned that all know the police have not held anybody for that murder? You tell me his family shouldn't be concerned that this man lost his life in such a dastardly way, and we must treat it with silence in the Senate because somehow for the JLP it reflects a lack of decency? I don't accept that.
No, hold on a little bit. Senator Sinclair. No, Senator, give me a... It's all right. Let me say something. Go ahead.
There are persons that are in custody in relation to the matter is under serious investigation by the police.
But this is hold on, this is exactly what I'm saying. Low it now, man. Just move on to something else. You're parading the people's distress in front of the nation more than it is already paraded.
So that the conscience of the Jamaica Labour Party may be affected to do the right thing and come with a comprehensive crime plan. That is why I'm putting it in there. When you take a 6-month-old baby that is killed, what do you mean there again? A 6-month-old baby murdered in the middle of a state of emergency, and you tell me we're saving lives, and the state of emergency is working, right?
Senator Brown,
yes.
You know, I kind of appeal to you, I appeal to you in terms of good sense and decency. That's how I appeal to you, and you ignore it, and you say you're going to talk anyway, and you're going to talk according to the standing orders. Well, in relation to the standing orders of this Senate, and it refers specifically to the issue of questions. However, it can be as extended, I am informed. A question shall not include names of persons.
This is not a question.
I'm not suggesting that it is a question. What I'm suggesting to you, all right, well listen, let me tell you something. It is my ruling that you move on and stop creating greater distress for the people who have suffered most dastardly in this instance. Move on, man. That is my ruling.
President, let me make this clear. The government speaks...
The ruling don't have nothing to do with JLP or PNP.
That's what it has to do with
decency.
It has everything to do with JLP protecting their failure to solve the crime problem. That's what it has to do with. So let me make it clear, Mr. President. Let me make it clear. I will not be muzzled in pointing out the lives of our citizens who have been lost.
And let me make it clear, I will not permit you to involve in any indecency that offends the sensibility of persons who are the victims of crime and families thereof. I am not permitting it. And it's not the first or second time you do it. Do not do it. And that is my rule.
Let me make it clear. Let me make it clear to you. The opposition has indicated our willingness.
Minister.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time having expired, might it be extended to allow him to complete his presentation?
The question is that the Speaker's time be extended to allow him to complete his presentation. In favor?
Yeah. Lord vote.
Mr. President, let me thank the Minister for extending the time. Despite 4 points of order None point of order objections. Mr. President, I'm almost over. But it's important that this nation...
You can talk for as long as you want.
Mr. President, why you get vexed and bad managed so? Why? Why? You're losing it, Mr. President? Put some order there, President.
If you want to see lose it, continue.
Mr. President, false tantrums don't affect me. As a father, I have learned how to deal with false tantrums and tantrums that may be real. So it doesn't affect me in the Senate. That's cool. I don't mind being a cantankerous child against injustice, against criminality, and the failure of your government to address crime. I don't mind being cantankerous on that. That's cool with me. But you're going into name calling now, President. It's beyond. It's below your dignity.
I got the name calling.
Yes, it's below your President. Don't sink to that level, President. I can deal with you and them in any way, but I don't want you as President to lower the standard of the chair. Mr. President, too many persons have been murdered during. What? Leave what alone? But that's what I'm doing. Don't protest too much, Mr. President. I was continuing to say, too many Jamaicans are being murdered, even in zones of states of emergencies. Even in zones. So this narrative that we're saving...
You want to vote for it then, man?
Mr. President, Notary Attorney Champagne recently said, we're approaching a state of diminishing return if there was ever any return on the state of emergency. The number of Jamaicans being murdered can be resolved by Senator Sinclair calling for hanging, not working. Can be helped by Senator Langmore calling for flagging, not working. What we need is a comprehensive crime plan that get the guns, get the guns, deal with the drugs. And Mr. President, part of the problem we have is that the investigative arms of the security forces are woefully deficient. I don't need to call a name, but take a case of a youngster in Hanover, murdered in May, but no autopsy has been done yet on the body. Murdered by the gun. So evidence to allow them to solve that murder may be in the body, but no autopsy May, June, July, August, September. Is that the way we want to carry out our crime fighting, where we're lacking investigation? In May, the commissioner said a former minister was under criminal investigation. Nothing since. Is the minister exonerated? Is the minister, where the DPP say four criminal statutes, 2 common law statutes, we hear nothing. The man in Montego Bay who was Arbor in Bozo, we heard nothing about that. These investigations are endless and to eternity, but producing no results. The criminal sees that. Man robbed supermarket in Clarendon in the middle of the morning, not at 9:30 in the evening. No charge, no conclusion of that investigation. The investigations are going nowhere. The criminals are winning. They bide the time for the first week of the SOE, and then they come back when the soldier and police tired. What we need, President, and I hope you don't think this indecent, is a comprehensive anti-crime plan. Until we get that, These states of emergency will be fleeting illusions being pursued, but the success of fighting crime will never be attained. The reality is, Senator Webby, the data. And this is why I commend the leader of the opposition and his team in the House, because they have asked for the data to be presented. They have asked for a meeting with the government and the opposition and broad stakeholders to look at the issue of crime fighting, but this government says only we can solve it. In fact, at this point, it sounds like only Andrew can solve it, because he was there a report I heard that he's taking responsibility for the Ministry of National Security. Mr. President, what this country needs, what you need, what I need, which all 21 of us need, which the people need, is a comprehensive crime fighting plan. The minister said to us, the SOE is not that. Where is the plan? Telling me less people died in Montego Bay doesn't make up when more people die in Jamaica. Tell me less people die in South St. Andrew don't make up when more people die in Jamaica. Tell me less people die in Honourable don't make up when more people are dying in Jamaica. I am for Jamaica. All of Jamaica. This government, starting from 2015 with the statement about solving crime, just give them the chance to come to power and you will sleep with your doors open, have failed us. The SOEs have failed us. Despite your temptation, provocation from the government side, despite their provocation, I'm going to stay and I'm going to vote one last dege time for an extension of the state of emergency. I'm going to vote for it today. Not because it's working, but because they have nothing else. But there's an opportunity, as the Observer editor will pointed out today, to come together with the opposition, come together with other stakeholders. Let's discuss the statistics. Let's discuss the reality. Let's discuss the people whose name, Mr. President, you don't want me to call. Let's discuss their loss of life and how we can prevent it in the future. That is my desire. That is my goal. And I ask the government side to today, in this Senate debate, commit yourself to working in cooperation with the opposition. Commit yourself to working in cooperation with other stakeholders. That the summit meeting between the Prime Minister and the leader of opposition that took place on January 1st this year need to be continued. If Trump and Kim Il-sung can meet how much time and ready to meet again, why can't Andrew Holness and Peter Phillips meet? The Korean leader. Me know him father, Kim Il-sung, grandfather Kim Il-sung, from those days. Kim is enough for me. Kim is enough for me. Kim is enough for you. If Donald and Kim can meet, Peter Phillips and Andrew Holness can meet.
Are you comparing Peter to Kim?
No, I'm comparing Andrew to Donald. I'm comparing Andrew to Donald. Yeah. So, I urge the government to pledge today, to make the cooperation that the opposition has called for in tackling crime real. One hand can't clap. We have been trying to get you all this time to the table. If you don't come to the table, if you don't come and discuss crime with the opposition and the other stakeholders, forget future states of emergency extension. May it please you, Mr. President, in decency or decency notwithstanding, I speak up for the people as I see it. One love.
Minister? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Senator Brown. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm just sorry that Senator Morris has left so that I'm unable to just indicate that understood that he had other obligations. But I'm sorry that he wasn't here to explain his indication that he didn't see my belief in my earlier presentation. Because I don't believe, unlike it appears for some, that one needs to shout to be heard, that one needs to be loud to passionately believe in what one holds dear and holds important. And I don't believe that volume adds credibility or even truth to what you say. Because, Mr. President, I believe very strongly in my opening remarks, and I believe very strongly in the importance of extending the state of emergency. But I'm not going to shout in response to the shouts which we have all just had to endure. And regretfully, because it is extremely important to many of us in here this morning that we be able to pay our final respects to the late Dr. Ken Leo Ball, that I will not go through and respond to every utterance that was made. But there are some points which I do wish to make in closing this debate, Mr. President. In having stated that the state of emergency is not the crime plan, I also want to reiterate a point which I've made before, which is that Plan Secure Jamaica, which addresses all aspects of crime, from cyber to terrorism to border control to crime itself, violence and other aspects, organized and non-organized, that was tabled in the lower house in 2017 by Prime Minister Holness. Mr. President, at another layer, we have a 214-page, 5-pillar anti-crime strategy which addresses and contains the government's strategies in respect of prevention through social protection, situational crime prevention. It addresses rehabilitation and reduction of recidivism. It addresses the matter of swift and sure justice, and it addresses effective policing at the different levels. It is available online, it is available in hard copy, and I commend it once more for reading. Below that, Mr. President, there are also the operational plans of the police, which have key performance indicators and targets as per division, and which are being monitored and evaluated and being addressed by the Commissioner, who is seeking to reorganize and restructure the police force. Mr. President, through creative strategies, we have partnered with UE, we have partnered with CMU, we have partnered with the Monigue College, we have a new college, a training college in Montego Bay, as well as a new base. We have renovated and expanded Twickenham Park, we have renovated Harman Barracks, to ensure that we are able to train and train more and train better. Mr. President, we have instituted the National Youth Service Corps to ensure that we are able to not only engage unattached youth, but to train them to the highest standards to ensure that there is a core of young people who are a better pool from which we can recruit for not only the JDF but the JCF both. We're addressing the issue of mobility. We're addressing the issue of the conditions within which the police work so that they can be more effective and productive. Not only has the budget provided for the renovation and rebuilding of 60 police stations, but just this week, 8 contracts were signed for the renovation of 14. Underway, 14, Mr. President. Mr. President, 15,000 youngsters have benefited from training, internship, and on-the-job training by the HOPE program. 15,000. And this continues. Mr. President, unattached youth are being trained by heart with a small stipend in areas that can allow them to find an alternative, a way forward where they have fallen out of the school system, Mr. President. We have increased the funding to the National Parenting Commission and have increased management so that they are now going out into the communities to supplement the need for greater training of how it is we bring up our babies and our young children to ensure right from start they are more likely to have a better future. Mr. President, we have increased the funding to PASS. We have increased the school feeding program. It's now 5 days a week to ensure that more children come to school. We have increased the focus on early childhood institutions and are ensuring that more are certified. Mr. President, I want to also say, because it's very important, Senator Morris had raised the matter of 30% of murders being due to domestic violence. And this is a point which is often made by the Prime Minister. And this is the point also that is covered when we say that states of emergency are not a panacea. They don't solve every problem. As I said earlier, not every socio-economic, not every psychosocial, and not every type of crime. But I do want to say that the National Plan of Action to End Gender-Based Violence, which is a plan which was developed across administrations with deep consultation, I want to just say on a positive note and place on the record that one of the successes that we have had within Foreign Affairs, working closely with the ministry responsible for gender, is to secure 8 million euros to support the national plan to end violence against women and children. And that plan is being formalized with the PIOJ and all of the stakeholders that are responsible. The plan exists, but we need to develop the sub-aspects that can be focused on so that we best use these resources. We have 2 shelters being worked at because women need to have somewhere to go and to go with their children if they are fleeing a situation of high risk at home. And there have never before, from 1984, we have only had 1 shelter in this country, NGO, and for the first time now, we will bring into effect 2 government-run shelters for women and their children who are victims of domestic violence. So, Mr. President, we are working across...
On a point of order. Isn't it indecent to be clapping when so many Jamaicans are dying, murder every day?
Senator Brown.
Mr. President, I make these points to say that we are working across the spectrum, on all the aspects that are necessary for us to try to deal with the intractable issue of crime that has been increasing over the past decades. From 1989, when we started at about 400 and made its way up, Mr. President. While there have been peaks and troughs, the general trend has been upward. This is not a new issue, it's not an easy issue, it's multifaceted. It must take effort and time.
This disrespect to women when they are speaking. You consistently
Mr. President,
disrespect women when they speak.
Mr. President,
stop doing it.
it is not to say, Mr. President, I just want it to be clear
Allow the lady to speak. She not disturbing.
that no one has ever said
Listen and learn.
that the state of emergency prevent all crime. And we cannot say that the fact that a murder or murders have taken place in the space of a state of emergency, that it means that it has failed. The point is that they cannot solve everything, as has been explained, and it cannot prevent everything, but they have saved lives. When murders and shootings reduced by 22% last year, clearly what that means is that this year's murders, when they are compared, you're comparing a lower number to as your base denominator because the numbers went down. To bring funny statistics to try to press a narrative, I think it's unfortunate because we all want the same thing.
Mr. President,
we all want
the statistics I quoted is not phony. It is from the police. It's not phony. It's from the police, and it shows murder this year at a higher absolute number than last year, at a higher percentage than last year. The minister is deliberately misleading the Senate.
Mr.
First of all,
President,
one minute.
My apologies,
First of all,
Mr.
I am
President.
not misled. I am not misled because I understand what is being said. Go ahead.
Mr. President,
Give us your level of understanding. I can understand you can't be
Minister,
misled
continue, please.
because you don't have the data.
Mr. President,
But we who have the data are being know that
President,
it's
Bro,
when you look
misleading.
at the
Please,
data,
go ahead, please.
when you look at the data, there are divisions which are having reductions and there are divisions which have spikes. Mr. President, the fact is that work is being done across the spectrum. There are successes and there are challenges. It is because of the challenges and their emergency level why we are asking for an extension of the state of public emergency. Mr. President, on that note, I ask that the resolutions before us be approved.
Members of the Honourable Senate have heard the resolution and the request for approval. Madam Clerk, could you please execute the appropriate roll?
Mr. Graham, Senator
Yes.
Graham, Senator Brown, Senator Charles, Senator Crawford, Senator Fraser Binns, Senator Gale,
We have had the debate. Please, if you want to continue, do so downstairs. There is a vote being taken and you need to pay attention.
Senator Horton, Senator Hill, Senator Johnson Smith, Senator Knight, Senator Longmore, Senator Morgan, Senator Morris, Senator Morrison, Senator Samuda, Senator Scott Motley, Senator Sinclair, Senator Skeffrey, Senator Webby, Senator Williams, Mr. President. Need it on the record. Need it on the record.
Yes. Because the clerk told me that she wasn't hearing my response. But notice when I shout intelligent things. Let's go. Yes is a very intelligent word, you know. Don't underestimate yes. You must come and see us again, you hear? I do report the vote having passed in the affirmative, 17 ayes and 14 absent, no noes, no abstentions.
Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. I ask that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Okay, just before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to the members who got here on time at 5 to 10, and thank you for the level of the debate, which, notwithstanding anything that I might said, has been interesting and certainly worthy, in the most part, to the level of debate that we expect here. Thank you all very much, and have a good weekend. The Senate now stands adjourned.